I do enjoy coming to San Francisco, and I really enjoy coming to TCT for CardioSource World News Interventions. We're talking about high bleeding risk patients. These are folks who are often excluded from stent and drug trials, and yet, such patients constitute a rapidly growing proportion of PCI candidates, and so they suffer higher event rates, and it's a little harder to even manage these patients. So Leaders Free is the first randomized clinical trial dedicated to high bleeding risk patients. So I'm with Dr. Philip Urban, who is from Latour Hospital, Geneva, Switzerland, and the lead investigator of the Leaders Free trial, and it is published online today, actually, as we speak. And the first data is coming in JAK Interventions, correct?
Correct, yes. There's an interesting paper by the group in Brazil, Ricardo Costa, in JAK Intervention, publishing the substrate to tell us that the stent actually works. It is an active stent, and the median late loss is 0.17. So on that basis, we were able to construct the Leaders Free trial.
Now, this is the BioFreedom drug-coated stent.
Correct, yes.
Okay. Can you kind of describe it for us? What does it do, and what does it do differently?
Okay. It's stainless steel. It's got an abluminal surface that's been treated in such a way that it's capable of retaining the drug without the use of a polymer, without the use of a carrier, and therefore the drug moves into the vessel wall quite rapidly. Over a period of 4 weeks, it's all done. So rapid kinetics and absolutely no polymer. So obviously no possibility of a reaction to a polymer.
Right.
And given those two facts, then we thought it might be quite reasonable to look at short DAPT with this device. And we knew that some patients systematically excluded from trials simply can't take 6 months or 12 months, depending on which side of the ocean they are. And so we thought this would be really interesting to target them.
Obviously referring to the fact that you do things a little differently on one side of the ocean than we do in terms of the dual antiplatelet therapy. You handled that very well, very diplomatically. Who were the patients and why were they considered high risk?
Right. So we chose a number of clinical parameters that define the risk of bleeding. And so advanced age was one of the major ones, the use of oral anticoagulants, the fact that patients had known or suspected cancer, that they would shortly need major surgery, or that they had poor renal function. Those were the major ones. And then there were a series of less frequently applied criteria. We thought it was important to use simple clinical criteria so that it could translate into useful clinical practice without the use of complex scoring systems, for instance.
In terms of the number of patients, and what did you find?
Okay, we included 2,466 patients. In 68 centers, Canada, Europe, Asia. And we found, first of all, the trial is very positive. We found that we have a very significant impact on efficacy. We have a 50% reduction of clinically driven TLR from 9.8 to 5.1 at 1 year. So it definitely behaves like an active stent. And then the bonus was that the trial design that we had written up was that we were looking for non-inferiority for safety. We were hoping that we would not take a risk with this short DAPT active stent. We had the nice surprise of seeing that in terms of safety, we got a very significant benefit with a 29% reduction of the composite of cardiac death, MI, and stent thrombosis. So definitely more effective and definitely safer than a bare metal stent with 1 month DAPT.
What about bleeding?
Yes. Well, bleeding was not part of the endpoints since there was no reason to think that it would be different in the two groups.
Right.
But you're absolutely right. It's a critical component because we need justification for this strategy. Are they really high bleeding risk patients? Answer is yes. The BARC 3 to 5, so severe bleeding, major bleeding, was 7% in both arms, which is a lot more than in the DAPT trials. Right. The bleeding in the DAPT trial was 2.7. In the Arctic trial, it was 2.8. On dual antiplatelet therapy. And some of the trials like Optimize, Reset, or Excellent were below 1% major bleeding. So these people are different, and that's important.
I mean, considering what I said at the very top, this is a growing population of patients we're facing. This is kind of important that we have something now, and we're actually enrolling a group of people that haven't been studied before.
Exactly. Those are the exact two important points. We didn't know anything about them. We pretended they didn't exist, and we took the data from younger patients with less comorbidity, and we just put it onto the charts of those patients, and we didn't really know what we were doing. Now we've got numbers, and I think it justifies entirely the design of the trial, and it also makes it a logical choice to change strategies. If you are an HBR patient, then I think you should probably now have a DCS, not a DES.
So what's next?
Well, we've got a wealth of data to look at because we have these 2,466 patients, and we want to look at specific subgroups, and we also want to definitely try and tease out the bleeding and thrombosis balance in these patients. And maybe some of these patients have more bleeding, less thrombosis, and maybe the other way around. We don't know all that yet. So there's a lot of work ahead with this database, and we look forward to doing that.
Well, congratulations, because this is a tough group, and it's very nice to hear some good news. For your sake, what I would like you to do is go to JACC Interventions and see the paper by Costa et al. And for CardioSource World News and CardioSource World News Interventions, I'm Executive Editor Rick McGuire.